Oh, nice. Monsieur Sass. Been hearing really good things about this. Thank you so much. Alright, now it's time for a month-long quarantine. More like Monsieur Sass. Anyways, since I covered the Rankin Christmas catalog for the last few Decembers on the channel, I figured I'd cover another property made by them, and that's what led me down this particular rabbit hole. And also this non-Bass film, but I don't feel like making a separate video just to cover it, so yeah. Alright, let's begin with Boss's first attempt at adapting from J.R.R. Tolkien, The Hobbit. Released in 1977 for TV, The Hobbit takes the 1937 novel and does a fine enough job in bringing Tolkien's literary work to life with decent pacing, characterization, and an overall decent story about Bilbo Baggins and a pack of dwarves going to get treasure from a dragon that looks more like a cat in this film, and to also get their home back from this vile beast. Sure, it's not a groundbreaking or deep story, but I think it does a fine enough job in making me give a shit about what's going on and seeing where the cast goes next in their adventure. Sure, some scenes feel a little rushed, but that's more so the fault of the shortened runtime than anything else. Man, I sure hope that doesn't become a recurring trend in these fucking films. My terrible attempt at foreshadowing aside, the film is overall just fine. It's not bad, not amazing, it's just fine. Like I said earlier, it's not a very deep story or anything, so there's only so much I can say about it without dragging on for several minutes. The songs are at least catchy and composed well, so it has that going for it at least. Why would you adapt the ending of the story after adapting the prequel to the story? That is so fucking idiotic. It's like starting Star Wars with Return of the Jedi before A New Hope. It just makes things confusing. Even ignoring that, the film itself rushes through the events of the story just to fit that runtime, and shock of all shock, it doesn't execute it that well at all. Sometimes it'll spend a decent amount of time on Sam saving Frodo's ass from the enemy, or going to the Mountain of Doom, and then it'll just spend like 2 minutes on a fight scene or other people talking about fighting the enemy as if it's not that important. What the fuck? Speaking of what the fuck, Theoden dies from basically falling off a horse. Are you kidding me? This guy can take on a fucking army and riders/servants of Sauron just fine, but falling off a horse does him in? Ugh, whatever. I gotta hydrate real quick, give me a second. While I'm at it, what the fuck happened to the animation department between The Hobbit and here? Sure, the animation in the last movie wasn't 10 out of 10 or anything, but at least it flowed fine enough. In this movie, it'll have multiple moments where it just stutters or comes across as being animated at 5 frames a second. What a letdown. Especially when Rankin movies will only really have this issue when they do their stop-motion movies. You know, the one where it's understandable for it to be a little bit fucking janky at points. Not their 2D films, especially after they fucked up Frosty the Snowman back in the 60s. So, okay, the animation and story is not really handled well here. Are the characters and music at least good? Well, with the characters, no. They serve their purpose in the story, I guess, but the movie doesn't give me much of a reason to give a shit about them outside of Frodo, and that's only because he's tasked with destroying a fucking ring. Outside of that, nothing about the cast screams interesting or gets my attention, which is a letdown because I heard really good things about this series, and one of the positives is its characters, so to see it handled this fucking poorly, it stings. But at the very least, the music is good. From the intro to the end, the musical score for this film works in being catchy, well composed, and executed greatly. Even the song Where There's a Whip, There's a Way, despite being such a stupid song in terms of its lyrics.
Where there's a whip, there's a way.
It loops around to being so stupid I can't look away. It's also nice that a lot of the actors from The Hobbit reprise the role here, but I digress. However, I didn't mention the VA work up to this point or in The Hobbit because, honestly, it's really hard to fuck up a vocal performance and a product for consumers to buy, since usually, those have high standards or are at least decent. So that's why I more so bitch about bad VA work and then praise good VA work on these videos, because good VA work is common to me that it's not worth talking about. Also, I guess some people mistake this film for being a sequel to the Bahski Lord of the Rings movie, but that's more so the fault of Warner Brothers marketing the home media release of this film as part of a trilogy with the former, since this movie was planned as a direct sequel to The Hobbit, you know, because doing Fellowship was so hard to do or something. But yeah, that issue is more so thanks to Warner Brothers. I'd be surprised that WB would do something stupid, but if I had a nickel for every dumb thing they did, I could pay for 4 fucking mortgages.
I hear 5!
Anyways, last one. Released a year after the Rankin Hobbit, Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings adapts the first part of the book trilogy,
Yeah,
and the second part of the trilogy in one film.
fuck off!
So close, guys. So fucking close. So much like Return of the King, it rushes through the story thanks to its limited runtime, and as a result, the story and characters are worsened as a result. Unlike Return of the King, however, the cast is more memorable and interesting since despite the story being smooshed together, it manages to still give us scenes where the audience can appreciate more of the cast than the Rankin boss version. Sam and Frodo are more interesting than this version, and their chemistry is great. Aragorn is more of a character and gets to be more of a badass, and has good chemistry with not only Frodo, but Gandalf and Legolas. And even Gandalf gets to be more than just a generic wizard that often has to clean up small people's messes. He has more natural chemistry with Frodo, we get to see him with more emotions than just stoic. He's also more sassy/animated than the past version, which I can greatly appreciate.
I say right foot creep, walking with that heater.
The only issue I have with Gandalf is that his vocal performances is not that good here. Especially in the scene with the Balrog where he tells the beast he can't pass.
You cannot pass!
William Squire, his VA, does try his best to portray the wizard in other scenes, but this scene feels like he's just reading his line and not putting much oomph in a sense when trying to intimidate the creature. How does the Peter Jackson do it?
You shall not pass!
Okay, that's a performance that can make pants darken. Holy shit. Speaking of performances, however, the soundtrack is really fucking good, not only in terms of composition, but it's also very catchy and elevates the scene they're used incredibly well. It's a soundtrack that works not only really well in the film, but also on its own, which is honestly the best kind of soundtrack to me. Speaking of me, I'm a sucker for good rotoscoping, and this film excels at that in fucking spades. Rotoscoping, for those who don't know, is the art of tracing over film, frame by frame, to make it look as realistic as possible in terms of the fluidity and the animation. It flows incredibly well, while also sticking to the art style of the film, save for a few scenes like in the bar where it looks like they slapped a cartoon filter over live action footage, but I mean, that's only in a small amount of scenes thankfully, and the rest of the animation looks great, not only fluidity, but also its art style, character design, and overall color palette. This is hands down the best of the animated Lord of the Rings movies I've seen. But, despite this high praise, them rushing through the first two portions of the book series is its Achilles heel, unfortunately, turning it from a 5 out of 5 to a 3.5 out of 5. This film and The Return of the King suffer from the same pacing issue, and both needed time to breathe in order for their stories to work as well as the original books they were adapting. For many years, fans of the trilogy thought it was impossible to adapt these written works, and after seeing these films, I could see why. The Bahski version was the closest to breaking that barrier of impossible adaptations, but even that fell short thanks to cramming in 2 portions of the story into one. What a shame. But despite not being able to break that barrier, this movie did serve as a good base for someone else to come around and break it. And that person was Peter Jackson. So in a weird sense, this animated version of The Lord of the Rings was just as important to the franchise as the Jackson trilogy, since it helped partially form the base work on how to make a big story like Lord of the Rings work for the big screen. And that's great. Anyways, enough sappy shit, let's wrap this up. Overall, this was an interesting experience for me. Sure, none of these movies were amazing, but it could have been a lot worse, honestly. Anyways, happy holidays everyone, and I'll see you in the new year. Take care everyone. Alright, finally free from quarantine. Gonna get to spend some time with my wife, my daughter, and the itching has also finally stopped. Lesson learned. Never use that brand again. What the fuck?